I apologize for the technical difficulties. David Hopkins with the Legislative Service Office. As we do not yet have a chairman, absent objection, I was going to go ahead and run the meeting to the point that we elect a chairman. It does look like we do now have a quorum. And so to get started then, we'll have Ms. Hamilton call the roll.
Senator Boner,
Here.
Senator Crum, Senator French,
Here.
Senator Grill,
Here.
Senator Jones,
She's trying to get on. She's having problems.
Senator Larson,
Here.
Representative Banks,
Here.
Representative Chestic,
Here.
Representative Eklund,
Here.
Representative Larson,
Here.
Representative Lawley,
Here.
Representative Straw.
She is also having problems. I'm sending her, forwarding her link right down. Also, Senator Crum requested that if somebody could send the link to his cell phone, if that's possible. But numbers in the chat there.
Sounds good. 1 second.
All right, members, we'll just hold off for a moment then as we try and get more people into the meeting.
Jones, Crum, and Strzok are missing. Yeah.
All right. I think we are going to go.
Jones. Strzok.
I think.
Members, given the timing and that we do have a quorum, absent objection, we can proceed with the election of a chairman. Is there any objection to proceeding at this time, or would anyone like to waive the comment? Members, given the timing and that we do have a quorum, absent objection, we can proceed with the election of a chairman. Okay. Hearing no objection, then the first order of business for the committee this morning is that election of the chairman and vice chairman. The historical practice of the committee has been to rotate the chairmanship every 2 years between the House and the Senate. Should the committee desire to continue that tradition, this legislative term, the chairman would be a member of the House and the vice chairman a member of the Senate. It takes the majority of the quorum to elect the chairman and the vice chairman. If there are no further questions, or if there are no questions, the floor is now open for nominations for election to chairman of the Select Water Committee. Are there any nominations?
I would like to nominate Representative Eklund to be chair of Select Water.
Need a
Representative,
second, I'll second.
are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate Larson for vice chair.
Okay, we'll get to that after the election of the chairman.
Okay,
Any other nominations for chairman? Hearing none, the nominations are closed. All those in favor of electing Representative Eklund as chairman of the Select Water Committee, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? By your vote, Representative Eklund has been elected chairman of the Select Water Committee, and Chairman Eklund, I will turn the meeting over to you.
Gary's on. Thank you, David. Committee, I'm honored. And I'm looking forward to when we can do this in person. I'm not fond of this format, but we'll get through it. This is going to be a short, quick meeting, I hear, and I'm guessing everybody read through all 500 pages of the e-notebook. So the next order of business will be picking our vice chairman. The floor would be open for nominations for vice chairman.
I would nominate Dan Larson.
Second.
I would nominate Senator Boner.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Dan Larson be nominated and moved that
And second, I'll second the nomination of Senator Boner.
moved and seconded for Senator Boner. Is there any discussion? Seeing none will proceed to vote. Those all in favor of Senator, let me see, how do we do this? Yeah, let's just count up the votes in favor of Senator Larson first. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All those in favor of Senator Boner, raise your hand. All right, so the vote is 5-3 is what I got. Senator Boner will be the vice chairman. Thank you, both of you, for doing that. So I'm going to take a little bit of a privilege as we start. Some of you have been in my committee meetings before, and you need to know it's my favorite part of all of legislature is getting a bunch of minds around a subject and solving problems and doing it as a unit. We will always have a better outcome putting more minds around anything and everything. So this committee deal is my thing, and I think it probably is for many of you, especially as you've watched your bills change on the floor and different things happen, change in committee. This is a really important committee, and I don't think historically we've ever had a more important time in the history of Wyoming than we do with that Colorado River drainage and the things that are going on with that. I would share that I believe our Water Development Office, and they are guided a lot by the Water Development Commission. Those are appointed members, but the Water Development Office is probably the envy of the United States. We're very fortunate to have it. Very fortunate that our predecessors were so visionaries to set it up. I don't know when, but quite a few years ago. And also State Engineer's Office. We have attorneys that I think are the best in the nation. And we're going to need that as we negotiate things on that Colorado River to try to maintain what Wyoming has with water. We'll get into that further, but I think we've got the best attorney in the nation. Most of you have met Chris Brown. We'll see him from time to time helping us and guiding us along. And I bring up all of this, and this committee, the Select Water Committee is really a good one. I look down the panel and I think all of us are ready. It's also a really young one. When I came on 14 years ago, and I've been on intermittently, Dan Larson has as well, and Senator Boner. We had older members, a lot of history. Jerry Geis could tell you everything that had happened for half a century, and it was really good. We won't have that as much. There are a few of us that have been on here for a while. My House members are, with the exception of me, are all sophomores. So, and senators, you need to know it's a group of super sophomores. I really appreciated all of them. And then the panel of senators is much the same way. You've got a more of a mix of experience, and I think you got one freshman and a sophomore, and then some veterans. And anyway, this is a good committee. I bring all of this up because my hope is it will meld together everybody's ideas with our agency and the help of the fine people the state has hired to deliver a great product, and we'll look forward to doing some really good work. And those are my thoughts. Look around the dressing room. That's what I did when I was a high school basketball player. Looked around, saw my team members, and it gave me great comfort that not a lot was resting on my own shoulders. And so that's what we got going, a great team. And I hope that we can get through some very difficult things that we'll deal with. I guess it will. I will get to everybody. I want everybody's ideas on the table as we start making decisions and we start asking questions. And I hope not to run the meetings too terribly late, but if anybody's run late, it's probably me. So brace yourself for that. And with that, I think we probably need to Eve, if you could keep the roll open as people are able to come in. We've got Stacy now, Senator Jones. I don't know if Representative Strzok has made it in yet, but make sure you get them if they are able to get in, and Senator Crum. I think he said he was flying. So with that,
Mr. Chairman,
are you ready to take over him and turn we should probably do an introduction around this table so you know who everybody, well, you'll get to know them all, but the staff of the water development. We'll start with, on this side here, you go ahead.
So Bill Brewer, Deputy Director of Construction with Water Development.
And myself.
I'm Jason Mead. I'm the Director of the Water Development Office.
Jody Jackson, Small Water Project Program Manager.
Barry Lawrence, Deputy Director for Planning.
David Ray, Fiscal Manager for the program.
And I'm off camera. I'm Chase Tavelia in the planning part of the Water Development Office.
Okay, with that, take it away, Director.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I was trying to get your attention. It's maybe didn't have the audio quite how we need it. There was one thing I needed to bring to your attention, though, with the vote for the vice chairman. At the time that the vote took place, there were 10 members present, and it does require a majority of the quorum. So five votes, which is what you counted, would not be sufficient to elect the vice chairman. So that was just something I wanted to bring to your attention and have that addressed before we proceed. We need to have 6 people.
All right. Well, we picked up one more person, and the vote previously was 5-3. I did not vote. The 5-3 in favor of Senator Boner. Boy, I hate to put you on the spot, Stacy. Would you like to vote?
I
We
think
can't
I
hear-
did. I think I did just get in at the last thing. I did raise my hand.
Okay, we're gonna do another
Okay.
hand raising deal, everybody. That would be the best way to do it. Make sure we get this right.
Okay.
All those in favor of Senator Larson, raise your hands. Okay, I have 3. All those in favor of Senator Boner, raise your hand. I cannot see you, Stacy. Where are you at? I can't see a hand.
I have my hand raised right now.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm not looking right. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe we have 6. So, Senator Boner, you're still the vice chairman, looks like. Thank you, both of you men. Now, David, are we ready to turn the meeting over to the director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that correction. I appreciate that, but yes, that was the only thing I had.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Director Mead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you may or may not have the agenda in front of you, but we're on agenda item number 3. And what we're going to do is run through the level 1, 2, and 3 planning study contracts, and then the construction contracts first. So it's the first 6 sub bullets. And I'll start off by saying all of these projects that we're talking about this morning were either in the omnibus water bill planning or the omnibus water bill construction in the session that we just ended. So I know we have some new members. Most of you have heard this if you were on the Select Water Committee before or the Ag Committee, but the way the planning studies work, we receive applications every year on March 1st. So for example, we just received applications here a couple of weeks ago for sponsors that are interested in, they have issues. They've come to us to see if we can help them with that. And they've submitted applications. We then assign those to project managers within the office who work with those sponsors to understand their application, understand their issues, make sure that the water development program is the right program that can potentially help them out. If it isn't, then we try to point them in the right direction. But most of the time, sponsors are familiar with our program. So with that, we then actually go out on site sometimes and meet with the sponsors. And for our May meeting, which is coming up here, 5th, 6th, and 7th of May, if I remember correctly, that's when we will bring recommendations for the planning applications we received as of March 1st. And those would be the office or the director's recommendations. And that May meeting will be a Select Water Committee meeting jointly with the Water Development Commission. And at that time, we will go through each of the recommendations for the planning studies that were applied for. We'll have the planning or the sponsors associated with each one of those applications that you guys will be able to ask questions of. They'll provide answers. We'll give kind of a summary of what the applications are. And then from there, there's approval to move forward or preliminary approval on the planning studies. So after May, when we get those, let's say we have 17 planning studies, we approve 16 of them. Those 16 studies would then go back to the project managers. We would put an advertisement out in the newspaper that, hey, we've got these studies that we're going to be looking for engineering consultants to complete. They submit letters of interest and expertise, and the project manager assigned to that particular planning study or application would then review those and shortlist those interested consultants down to the ones that we think are qualified. From there, we put together a scope of work, and that scope of work is worked on understanding what the individual applicant or sponsor's needs are. We review those with our sponsors to make sure that we're addressing everything. And then we put those scopes of work into a request for proposal. Those then go back out to the shortlisted consultants for each project, and they submit proposals to us. And we then, at the May meeting, we will actually put together selection teams, which would be composed of the project manager here at our office, potentially an advisor from our office, maybe from the construction department. The project sponsor will be on that selection team, as well as 2 water development commissioners. And so that group will receive the proposal for each one of their assigned projects or applications, planning studies. They'll review those, and then they'll shortlist those down to 3 that we will then interview. And those interviews are usually in September or October. That same selection committee will conduct those interviews. And then at the end of the interviews, they kind of put their heads together and decide, okay, we're going to choose consultant A, for example. And we take that back. We have a commission meeting to solidify those choices. And then we take those projects with the dollar amounts associated. It's competitive bids, so they all submit sealed envelopes with their prices to complete that particular study. And we bring that back then in a recommendation that's then considered in November with our construction projects. And I'll get to construction projects in just a second. And then eventually they make their way in, they get reconsidered in November, and then they'll make their way into the omnibus water bill planning. So the reason I go through that is because we did all that work last year for the projects. The first 3 sub-bullets in front of you this morning on the agenda are all projects that we've gone through that process last year, went through the legislative session, they were approved through the planning bill, and now we just need the water develop or the select water committees review and recommendation. By statute, that's your duty. Review and recommendation to the Water Development Commission. And then here next week, we will have the Water Development Commission on Wednesday, the 19th, where they will then consider the same planning contracts with those individual consultants that were selected last year. So we're just effectuating what was in the planning bill. So I'm going to run through them pretty quick. And then just to hit on construction real quick. So all of our construction projects, or 99.9% of them, will come from planning studies. So we do master plans, for example, for municipal entities, or agricultural master plans, for example, and prioritize, understand the different sponsors' needs and their systems, and where there might be bottlenecks or need for improvements, and prioritizing different projects. And then that's how our construction projects come about, is from good planning studies. So all of these projects have been well vetted, and we have the sheet that you see on your screen right now. Perhaps. Yeah.
2 questions. A couple of hands.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I am sorry. I'm writing down notes. I needed a good review. We've got some hands up. Do this again. All right, we'll start with Senator Boner.
That's
Am I?
That's
Okay.
somebody else.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then who is that?
Well,
Maybe I need to be.
Senator Boner, you
Well,
still have your hand up on your other. You're in there twice.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
maybe that's Representative Strock, because I sent her the link. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Oh,
Okay.
oh. Can,
So it must be Representative
Tommy,
Strock.
can you talk to us right now? Go ahead and talk. You're still muted.
Oh, good. So everybody
There
can
you
actually
go.
hear me. Okay, I've been
There
on
you go.
and I've been struggling. I don't know what happened to my video, but I am here. So anyway, I've been listening, but nobody can see or hear me. So that was perfect. So, okay.
Okay.
And this is Gary Crum. The same thing going on. I'm down here at DIA, and I'm only on for about 20 more minutes, and then my flight's gonna take off.
Okay. That was Senator Crum?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, either of you have any questions right now, if not, we'll move on.
Okay,
This-
and this doesn't mean anything, but I somehow missed, I just need real quick, where is the meeting? I have May 6th and 7th, but I missed where it is.
It's in,
The meeting will be in Cheyenne at the Water Development Office.
Okay, thank you.
all right.
6th and 7th.
And Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. It's Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Jason, back to the very beginning when you first started there. When the projects come in, Do you do, I mean, I get and have been here before, so I know what happens after that comes in, but when they first come in, do you and your team take an initial cut, any type of initial vet questioning the proponents? Is there a checklist? Just for the new members to talk about, when a project comes in the door, just that first step. Maybe I missed it.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, Senator Grew, we assign that to a project manager within our office. They try to get as familiar as they can with the planning application that's in the door. So they'll talk with the sponsor to make sure they understand everything in the application and the issues they might have. They'll go back and look at previous studies done for that sponsor that might be related to the application that they've submitted to make sure, we're not reinventing the wheel, or we didn't look at this 10 years ago and they just haven't moved forward with it. We've had, change in administration or something with the sponsor. And then we also will take a look at that and understand, if it's a master plan, did they just do a master plan 5 years ago? Or, was it 20 years ago? Because we kind of have a shelf life we consider for master plans of about 10 years, where you'll start seeing, changes in municipalities, and we probably take it out a little bit further on agricultural master plans, just because there's not as many changes when it comes to irrigation systems and things like that. And then we also kind of look at our program priorities, which we have for each account 1, 2, and 3. And we see where they land on that program priority and, different things like that. We look at regionalization. If there's a particular community that needs a new water source, we don't just jump to the conclusion that that might be the best option if they're located to maybe a larger provider or a larger municipality, and it makes sense to bring in another community into that discussion to determine if regionalization might be a good option, and we start having those conversations. So there is a lot of legwork up front, and that all then goes into a recommendation of potentially fund or do not fund, or some kind of a modification to their application. And then we bring that to the body of the Select Water Committee and the Water Development Commission at our May meetings for consideration, to have those sponsors at the meeting to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jason.
Representative Struck, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question? We can't hear you, Tommy.
No, I do not. I will get my
Okay.
hand down. Sorry.
All right. Well, it's still up. So if there, maybe it's gone now.
Is it gone now?
It is gone. So I think we'll proceed on. I would like, David, if you catch somebody's hand up and I'm jotting down notes, call it to my attention, please.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll shift your attention to the summary sheet that we're sharing currently. We also provided that, or you've probably provided that in an email to you guys. Trying to remember what it was called. I think it was a Select Water Committee summary sheet, if I recall correctly. But it's what you have up on your screen, and I'll just run through that real quick. So on the far left side, or the first column, if you were wanting to go to that particular project in the e-notebook and look at that contract, that says or tells you what the e-notebook page that it's located on. The second column is just the name of the project, and these were the same projects, like I mentioned, that were in the omnibus bill planning. And then the third column is the consultants that we are proposing to go under contract with. And then the far right column is the actual contract amount. So under that first group of projects are our level 1 projects, new development, or account 1. We've got the ULIP master plan and our UW water research program. The second block of projects in the planning is our level 1, but under rehabilitation, or account 2. And we've got the 3 projects there. And then the last one is the level 2 project in our account 3, dams and reservoirs, the Middle Paposia River storage study. Again, this is really just to effectuate, provide recommendation to the commission to move forward and approve these contracts. So then we can start the work as soon as possible. So with that, I would ask if it wouldn't be appropriate to maybe consider those in a block for your review and recommendation.
That would be okay with me. Any discussion on that? I don't see any hands, so Representative Chestik.
Just a clarification, the contract amount, is that the amount of the contract with the consultant, or is that the contract amount for the entire project to get it done?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, that is the project amount with the consultant, and that is basically to get the study done. So example, Hewlett Water Master Plan, when we had the consultants put in on that, I don't remember how many, let's just say there were 3. And with Engineering Associates being the consultant of choice, their budget was 166,000. So that's what's in the contract.
Thank you.
Okay, Director, question I've got. So will we need to give preliminary approval, or will we be doing that in May? Do we need a motion?
Again, these are projects from last year. So we
Oh,
did
they're
all that stuff.
already done.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
we're in March of this year, a couple of weeks ago, we did take applications for new planning studies. So this new select water committee is going to go through the entire process. And then next March middle of March next year of 2026, we'll be at this point to approve those contracts. So realizing some of the folks on the committee are brand new, they didn't go through the process of understanding how the projects in front of us today have been vetted over the last year.
But they're all approved, and we will not need any action on any of it today.
These projects were appropriated dollars in the 2025 omnibus water bill planning that we just finished in the legislative session. Provided us the authority, the Water Development Commission, to spend those funds on these projects. So you're really, now it's the contract in front of you to effectuate those projects. And we're asking for your review and recommendation. And then the commission next Wednesday will consider them again and approve them. And then they will sign the contracts. We'll start on the work.
Okay, committee, do you understand that? So we'll go
Mr.
through the
Chairman,
block.
so we do need to vote on this block then.
Yes.
Yes.
I would move the first block of planning 2025 level 1, level 2 planning pond project contracts.
Second.
Oops.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'm not sure who got the second. Moved by Guru, seconded by Lolly. She's the one chuckling. Okay. Any discussion? We went through all of them.
We went through all the planning studies. So
okay,
those first 3.
Okay. Can hardly read them. Okay, we've been through those. Committee, are you ready to vote on our recommendation to approve those? I guess we are. All those in favor, raise your hand. Looks like you have pretty much full support. All those opposed, raise your hand. There's a hand. Oh, there we go. All right. So we have approval on the first block. Continue on, Director.
Just a question. Would it be easier just to say aye?
Oh, yeah, well, maybe.
Just because the way the Zoom meeting is, they jump around based on who they raise hands, and it's kind of hard to keep track.
Well,
just a suggestion.
We don't need a roll call on those votes. So, okay. Just trying to be sure we'll try a voice vote on the next block. Committee, go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next block of projects are our construction agreements, again, that came out of the omnibus water bill construction in the session that just ended. So yeah, David's got that pulled up there, starting from the top. We have our level 3 projects out of account 1. We've got 3 of those. And these are directly with our sponsors. So for example, the Bighorn Regional Joint Powers Board South Transmission Project 2025 is with the Bighorn Regional Joint Powers Board. It's a 50% grant in the amount of $405,000. So moving down then in account 2, we have 12 projects, 12 construction projects you'll see there. And then the third block of projects are our amendments, either in account 1, 2, and 3. This is where we have the Goshen Irrigation District, tunnels 1 and 2, the LISRA funding that was talked about pretty extensively, and the LaPrelle Dam rehabilitation LISRA funding in those. So again, these have been vetted pretty heavily. There's been a lot of conversations during the session, either in the Ag Committee, which is where our bills go first, and they go to the Appropriations Committee, and then back to the body for Committee of the Whole second reading and third reading. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for your recommendation on those construction agreements.
Okay, we have a hand up, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Mead, can you kind of give us a little bit of a rundown on where the project here in my district, Alkali Creek, is after the back and forth with the bill, the omnibus water bill? I just kind of, in your mind, where does it sit now? Is it kind of on the back burner? I mean, I know the money is gone except for a certain part, but I'd just like to know where that stands now in your view.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Representative Lawley. So with all the back and forth in the session, the way that ended up was the entire 59 million that had been appropriated previously is still intact.
Okay.
For a while, there was some discussion of reverting 50 million and utilizing some of that funding for LaPrelle Dam. But the LISRA funding is going to be used in full for LaPrelle Dam, and the funding for Alkali Creek Reservoir remains intact at 59 million. So the only change on Alkali Creek Reservoir was originally that funding was set to revert on July 1st of 2025, and that got extended 1 year to July 1st of 2026. There was some back and forth to push it to 2029 and got battered around a little bit, but ended up on July 1st of 2026. So currently we're at about 50% design with the consulting engineers that have been hired to do that. Of course, we've got some easements that still need to be put in place before we move forward. So I think I heard Senator Cooper and some others, and you might have been involved in that, with the intent to go talk with folks up there with our office. So I anticipate that we'll be having some conversations to try to coordinate our schedules and with the folks up there we need to talk to and proceed forward that way.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm planning on going to that too with Senator Cooper.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Martha.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you kind of the back and forth was a little at the end, a little bit confusing about where it ended up. So that was very, very helpful to know that. And I too plan to try to participate in working with getting the issues of the landowners kind of on the table and hopefully finally resolved. So thank you.
Okay.
So looking for approval on the construction.
Okay. Kind of while we're in that discussion, in previous select water committees and ag committees have got a sort of a promise from the appropriations committee that if we get these projects ready to go, ready to build, that the money would be available. That was a previous, I argued with them a bit then because they just can't make promises for the next set of legislators that come in, and we're seeing that, just a complete turnover of appropriations. But let's hope we can continue to maintain the same relationship with all the appropriations committees and people that will be in a great deal of influence in finding the rest of the money to finish off projects that we're going to have, because we're in a mood to build dams, and I hope we get several of them done. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve this last block of bills. Would somebody like to move that?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by Senator Grew, seconded by Lawley. All All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. Next block for our consideration, Director Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the last thing on the agenda, which is the last sub bullet, are small water project program projects. And during the session in our omnibus water bill construction, we have funding in there for account 1 small water projects and account 2 small water projects. Every year on November 15th, we have a deadline of November 15th to accept small water applications from sponsors. And Jody Pavlika, or Jackson, I apologize, administrates that program. And over the last several months, I believe we got 105 plus applications. She and others in the office have been going through those, vetting them, answering or getting questions answered from sponsors. So these are the projects then that we're going to be asking for approval on. And then they will also go in front of our commission next week for their review and approval. So again, review and recommendation, and I'm going to pass it over to Jody. So we have a question from Senator Crum.
Senator Crum, you have your hand up. Do you have a question? Go ahead. We can't hear you yet.
Sorry,
We didn't hear anything very clearly. Can you try it again, Senator? Oh, it's down. Your hand is down. You're good? Okay. Well, let's turn this over to the project manager, Jody Pavlika.
Okay, so for the benefit of the new members, I thought I would start with a little bit of a very high-level overview of the program. The purposes of this program is to provide a 50% grant up to $35,000 for small water projects that improve watershed health and function. We have some very specifically defined project types that are listed in the criteria. Those are small reservoirs, wells, solar projects, pipe and conveyance projects, spring developments, wetland developments, environmental projects, which are defined as stream channel rehabilitation or erosion reduction, irrigation projects, windmills, rural community fire suppression systems, or recreational projects, or the defined project types that are eligible. As Jason mentioned, the application deadline is November 15th, but the process for each one of these projects starts several months in advance of that November 15th deadline, because these projects come from the conservation districts around the state, and they have to be ultimately approved by the board of the conservation districts. So the districts work with their members and work with their boards to accept their application several months before the November 15th deadline, with the idea that they have to vet the project before they ever apply to the state for funding. So these projects began on the ground with the conservation districts probably last summer. So they are our sort of first line of vetting these projects before they even come to us on November 15th. The projects you'll notice on the summary spreadsheets are prioritized. The priorities as we have them listed are source water development. Priority 1, priority 2 is storage. Priority 3 is solar piping conveyance, that kind of stuff. Priority 4 is irrigation. Priority 5 is environmental, and priority 6 is recreational projects. So these priorities were based largely on the agency mission, is how those priorities were put together. And the way those are assigned is based on the primary project purpose or the largest cost of the project. So the primary purpose gets a little bit confusing. My good bad example is if you are drilling a well that is a 200-foot deep well, and you are putting in a stock water pipeline with the well, if the stock water pipeline is 5 miles long, that cost is going to drive the cost of the project, and it's going to be more expensive than the cost of the well. So because of that then becomes a pipeline project as opposed to being a well project, which might be considered a priority 1 versus a priority 3. So we try to tie it back to hard numbers and the overall expenses of the project when assigning those priorities. You will notice on the left-hand side of that table, there are a few projects that have a little shovel in the left side column next to them. Those projects have received what we call shovel-ready status. And for all intents and purposes, that means they have all their design, all their permits, all their funding, all of everything's ready to go before they ever apply. So that means they are seeking to be classified as a shovel-ready project, which gets it a #1 priority. And of course, that's at the discretion of the committee and the commission. But the thought behind that was there are a lot of very good projects which tend to come in as a priority 5 or a priority 6. And we wanted to give these projects a way to sort of help their lot in life if they were willing to get their ducks in a row and come in ready to go. So we had a lot of shovel-ready requests this year, and that is represented by the shovels, as you can see on that table. Okay, so with that having been said, unless there's any questions, I can dive into the tables.
Any questions, committee? Seeing none, continue on. Ms. Pavlika.
Okay, so the first section we're going to look at, there's 2 tables here. There's the account 1 summary and then the account 2 summary. We'll start with the account 1 summary. And they're broken down by individual sponsors. So you see those little blue bars that go across the line there. That is the designation between individual sponsors. So Hot Springs County is starting it off for us this year. On account 1, they have 6 account 1 projects that are largely pipe and compliance with 1 spring and 1 environmental project. The 6 projects total up to $191,000. Laramie County is the next. Laramie County Conservation District is the next district on the list. They have 5 projects for a total of $155,000, which is a mix of lots of different types: springs, pipelines, wetlands, that sort of thing. Laramie Rivers is next. They have 1 project this year for a total of $35,000, and it's a pipeline project. The next district is Lincoln Conservation District. They have 1 project this year. It is a small reservoir for $35,000. The next district on the list is the Little Snake River Conservation District. They have 35 projects for a total of $1,050,000. And this is a mix of wells, pipelines, and a couple of small reservoirs and 1 irrigation project. The next district on the list is the Medicine Bow Conservation District. They have 3 projects for a total of $95,000. And this looks to be a well project, a pipeline project, and a spring project. And then we had 1 late breaking change on this, which we did not have time. It's only come in the last couple of days. We don't have a lot of information on this, but the next project, Meeteetse Conservation District, they were requesting funding for Franks Fork East Stock Tank. That project has been withdrawn. So like I said, unfortunately, the meeting materials had already gone out by the time we had that, but they requested that project be withdrawn. So for the intents of that table, you can zero out the total for the Franks Fork East Stock Tank project. So the next district, the Poposia Conservation District, is requesting 2 projects for $69,000. Those are both pipeline projects. The next district is the Sheridan County Conservation District. They have 3 projects, and they're environmental projects, and they total up to $105,000. Next on the list is Shoshone Conservation District. They have 1 project, and that is a $35,000 grant request for a pipeline project. Next, we have South Bighorn, which has 1 project this year, and they are requesting $16,500 for a small reservoir. Next is the Sublette County Conservation District. They have 4 projects for a total of $140,000, and those are well projects. And then lastly, we have the Teton Conservation District with 1 project for a total of $13,250, and that's an environmental project. So with the zeroed out project, I can run you through the new dollar amount there. So the new 20.
On that. Zoom in on that.
So that after we zeroed out that project for Matitsi, the new 2025 request total goes to $1,904,000. 904, excuse me, apparently talking is a challenge today. $1,904,750. So the remainder is then, the remaining amount in the account is then adjusted to $409,734.40.
And I might just mention, if you're looking in your e-notebooks and you want to zoom in on these tables, we're on page 366 of the e-notebook. And then if you have questions or you want to look into this further after the meeting, you can actually click on any one of the project names under the sponsor and it'll take you to the actual recommendation for that particular project, as David's showing here, for a little bit more information. So with that, we'd ask if you have any questions on the account 1 small water projects that will again go in front of the Water Development Commission next Wednesday. We'll actually have sponsors at that meeting in case there are questions, so they can provide a little bit more information. And I would also say that realizing, you know, you haven't seen some of these things until now, and because the Select Water Committee was formed fairly late in the session, we weren't able to get the notebooks out to you as quickly as we normally would. I think next year we'll try to combine the commission and the Select Water Committee meetings so you can just be at the same meeting and hear from sponsors. But we would ask for your favorable recommendation for the account 1 small water projects.
Committee, are you ready to vote? It looks like it. I don't see any hands. All those in, oh, we need a motion and a second.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Boner.
I move the aforementioned projects with the exception of Frank's Fork.
Second.
Okay,
Yeah.
seconded by Representative Larson. Okay, are we ready to vote now? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that block passes.
Okay, we'll move on then. So the next summary table for account 2 is on page 435. Again, if you want of the e-notebook, if you want to be able to kind of zoom in on your own and click on any of the projects and see the recommendations, but Jody will start going through the summary sheet.
Okay, thank you. So we have this one. You'll notice that there are a few yellow bars across this one. We did not have enough money to fund all of the account 2 projects this year. So the ones that are marked with the yellow bars are marked with a DNF in the side, which means that those are a do not fund recommendation. So let's see, starting at the top, Clear Creek Conservation District has 2 projects for a total of $49,000, with one of those being an irrigation project and another one being a reservoir project. Next on the list is the Hot Springs Conservation District. They have, looks like I didn't get the total adjusted on the side there. They should say 2 projects for $70,000 instead of 3 for the Hot Springs, and that'd be 1 pipeline and 1 spring. Next on the list is the Laramie County Conservation District. They have a pipeline rehabilitation for $35,000. And then is Little Snake River Conservation District. They have 9 projects for $185,000. Although knowing that I didn't apparently adjust the total, that's probably 8 projects for $185,000. Next on the list is Medicine Bow Conservation District. That one, their request was not fund this year. And then Matitsi had 12 projects for a total of $420,000. That's a mix of irrigation and recreational projects. Next on the list is the Poposia Conservation District. They had 3 projects this year for a total of $105,000, and those are irrigation projects largely. The next district is the Saratoga Encampment Rollins Conservation District. They had 1 project that was an irrigation project for a total of $35,000. After that is the Sheridan County Conservation District. they have one project in account 2 for a total of $35,000. Was a pipe and conveyance project. And last but certainly not least is the Sublette County Conservation District. They have 2 projects this year for a total of $70,000. So that leaves, with those do not funds, that leaves a remaining total in the account of $8,767. And then if there's any questions, I'll be happy to do my best.
Oh, we've got some questions. Senator Guru.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the, when we put a project on do not fund, does that mean they're at the top of the list when new funds become available? Do they go back in the mix and just have to be sorted out with the rest of the projects? Or can you give me a little flavor on that one, how that works?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we recommend that the project sponsors, and we talked to all of these project sponsors individually and explained to them that we believe the projects were good projects, but they were largely do not funded because they were priority 5. And our criteria requires that if we cannot fund all of the projects in a category, that we don't pick and choose between the projects in the category. We just cut off all of the 5s and pay the next wholly fundable categories. So we spoke with all of these project sponsors and told them that we thought the projects were good. And if they wanted to come back, they were certainly welcome to come back. And one of the things they could do this year would be to focus on getting the designs completed and the permits acquired. And then when they came back next year, they could come back shovel ready, which would move them up the list for a higher priority.
And then Jody, we have some that are not priority 5s that just weren't funded because they really didn't meet eligibility. If you want to just briefly
Thank
at a
you.
high level.
That's a good reminder. We had two or so projects this year that were, looks like 2 projects that were do not funded based on the merits of the project. The Hot Springs County Baird Lower Pipeline was recommended as do not fund because that project was an on-field project, which was proposing to provide water to a center pivot. And that has historically been something that we have not found to meet public benefit requirements and therefore not an eligible project. So that one, we spoke to the project sponsor individually about that and they did not have any issue with that recommendation. So that one was a do not fund for Hot Springs County. And the other one was in Sublette County, the Sled Runner Reservoir Repair. That project, that is a reservoir that has been around since 1964. But the purpose of the request was to reduce the size of the reservoir to meet the permitting requirements of the project. So the project sponsor had the landowner approach them because they wanted to convert a stock reservoir to a fish propagation reservoir. And as a part of that process, state engineer's office discovered that the reservoir was built larger than the permitted capacity was allowed. So they have to reduce the overall size of the reservoir. And I'm very quickly getting out of my understanding of the specifics here, but given that this was sort of largely a permitting issue and that the reservoir is currently functioning and providing beneficial use in its current capacity, we recommended do not fund on that one as well.
Thank you.
So Representative Chestik, you had your hand up a little earlier and I don't have a full panel to look at here. Or did you still have a question?
My question was about the DNFs as well, and it's been answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? And Eve, I might mention if we have people online, that's a possibility too. Let me know. If you would. Okay. So are we ready to vote on that block? We have another block. Is there a motion and a second to approve this block of small water projects?
Move to approve.
Moved by Chestik, second by Lolly. Okay. All those in favor, any discussion on the motion? Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could real quickly,
Yep.
before we move on to interim topics,
Go ahead.
talk about future meeting schedule. I'm going to have David here bring up screen share our future meeting schedule. Just to talk about that for a few minutes, even though it's not on the agenda. Back in our November and December meetings with the Select Water Committee and the Commission, we went through and kind of figured out where we might have conflicts and everything with state fair and elections or whatever, depending on the year. So I misspoke. Our next meeting is May 7th and 8th here in Cheyenne. So we'll have a workshop followed by the actual Water Development Commission Select Water Committee meeting. One thing I wanted to point out here is depending on the year and how many new water development commissioners we may have, we offer an orientation to kind of get into the weeds of the different little sub programs we have within water development. We've got one new water development commissioner this year. They're probably fairly familiar with our program, but we're going to offer, if they want to come down on May 6th to do that, they'd be more than welcome to. But knowing that we have quite a few new people on the Select Water Committee, we wanted to offer that to you guys as well. And just wanted to get your thoughts. Is that something that you can budget for to come down on May 6th, or we could do it, on May 9th, or if you're not interested, we don't have to do that, but it's really just to provide some more education on the program and so you guys can understand the details and answer questions or ask questions, and we can provide you some more information.
So committee, I think we'll be in front of management council first part of April. I'm thinking the 6th or something like that. And that would be when we would ask permission to allow the Select Water Committee to one extra day for that May meeting. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah, it looks like you are. Any discussion on that idea? Okay, it sounds like it'd be a good plan.
And then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just kick it to Barry for just a second, because we've started having some conversations every August. Instead of being in Cheyenne, we will go somewhere else in the state to look at and do a tour. So we would have a tour one day, a workshop on the second day, and then a commission meeting on the third day, or sometimes we switch those orders up. And this year we are looking at the Rock Springs Green River area. So I'll hand it over to Barry just to kind of give you a heads up of what's going on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the director has mentioned, we are set for a summer meeting and tour in the Green River Rock Springs area, August 5th through 7th. The workshop would be the afternoon of the 5th. The tour would be Wednesday, August 6th, and then the meeting would be the last day on the 7th. Relative to the tour, I need to let you know that the commission actually discussed several different ideas for location for the tour. But given current issues surrounding the Colorado River water supplies, as Chairman Eklund has mentioned, and the state's downstream obligations under the compact, it was felt that it would be good to have a better understanding of some of the water uses in the basin. And in this case, industry, most specifically Trona mines and Trona mining. So to that end, Commissioner Cott brought forth a proposal for such a tour at the December meeting, and the commission discussed it and agreed that that's where they would like to go for their August 6th tour. So as it stands now, a lot of work has gone into getting organized for that tour. Commissioner Cott is kind of leading the charge on this. It will involve 4 separate mines, with Genesis Alkali taking the lead for coordination with the mines. And the reason it's 4 separate mines is that we will have to break up into smaller groups, 8 to 10 per group. And it will include, the tour will include both surface and underground facilities. Transportation is being arranged and so forth. The one thing I need to let you know is it will be an early start from the hotel out there. That's all being worked on, and we'll let you know exactly. But 2 of the mines requested that they have their group to start at 7 a.m. So, and of course, there's a half-hour travel time. One of the mines said 7:30 and the other said 8. So it's going to be an early start that day. And lunch will be provided, but you would be back in the Green River Rock Springs area early to mid-afternoon. So more details on that. As I mentioned, Commissioner Cott is leading the charge and organizing all that. He's got the connections out there. And then, so at the May meeting, he'll come with more details and he'll be asking for a sign up with firm commitments. Obviously we have to firm count for the mines.
Thanks, Barry. So again, a little bit unique. Normally we'll go to multiple different locations and projects, but do think this is relevant as these Trona mines could potentially be affected if there were ever a Colorado River curtailment. So it is a good subject and it'll be interesting to look at. So we just wanted to make you aware of that. And again, more details in May, and we will continuously bring up the future meeting schedules in May and then in August. So you kind of have a heads up when meetings are going to be in advance of them actually falling in your lap. So if there aren't any questions, I'd pass it back to Representative Eklund, Chairman Eklund.
Okay, committee, any questions on that? Speak up because I don't see any hands and we can't see everybody, I don't think. There we go. Now I can. Well, it looks like no questions. I guess something that I'd make clear, the select water could come to this next meeting, either virtually, probably virtually, if we wanted to. The next Water Development Commission meeting is next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we could sit in on that.
If you want.
And
yeah, I mean, typically we don't. The next
I know,
or the joint meeting would be in May, but yeah, you're always welcome.
but it would be a good part of our education
And it's basically the same agenda that we just went over, a few little extras.
okay, in more detail or probably about the same?
Yeah, a little bit. A little
Yeah.
bit more detail.
So that's also a possibility, but normally we'll see the Water Development Commission pretty much sitting at the same table while we have these meetings. I think you're still doing it that way.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So the next item, no discussion. The next item will be interim topics. And last I saw, we had a couple of them. One of them was from Senator Hicks. Could we bring that up on the screen?
Give me just a moment to pull
Yeah.
it, I sure can.
Okay. Trying to pull that up right now, committee.
Now I can type.
Well, Mr. Chairman, while we get that up there, would this be a good time to mention that when we do that trip in August, that we fully expect and have always had the local representatives and senators from that district to put on a lavish dinner for the committee at their home, and it's usually a pretty big deal.
Okay, I guess we'll just have to talk to those folks.
Well, I look at JT there.
Can you hear us, Sweetwater County people laughing across the state?
Well,
Yeah.
we know you want to do it.
Yeah.
JT.
We'll
Well-
put something together. Stacy and I'll work on that.
If rumor has it that while we're touring the Trona mine, we might have lunch there. So that's what I've heard. But I don't know about a lavish steak dinner. Prime rib would be preferred, maybe.
Well, that's what I recall, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Just thought I'd throw
All
that
right,
out
well,
there.
Not expecting much, are we? We have the interim projects up on the screen. I hope everybody's reviewed them. They came in a late email.
He was sharing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one, is anybody prepared to discuss that first one? I don't know if we've got Senator Hicks on the line. We don't.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
we do not have Senator Hicks scheduled to speak on this topic.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and tackle it here. Maybe both of them. Well, for a little while. The second one, I think we'll have the state engineer involved with that one, because that's his recommendation. This one here is to provide legal remedies for the false or improper use of a prescriptive easement for irrigation water conveyance system. And the hope is is to amend legislation on prescriptive easements. Is there any discussion about this topic? And what we'll be doing is we'll need a motion. We'll do them separately. We'll need a motion to approve this as an interim topic, and 2 would be more than enough. I think it isn't, we'll be doing other things most of the time. These would be separate little bills that would be brought by Select Water. Is there any discussion on this first recommendation? The other part of that is it will have to go through Management Council for their approval as well. So I'm not seeing any discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Larson. I think that was you.
No, that's me. It's Senator Boner. Hi.
Oh, yes. All right, I need my glasses on, Senator. Go ahead.
Yeah, just it looks like we have maybe a few people online. I don't know if we want to take any public comment as part of this discussion as well.
Sure. I do. Eve, do we have anyone online?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we have anyone online regarding this topic.
Okay. Any agencies or anybody, any discussion from anyone?
Representative Lawley does have her hand raised.
There. Boy, I can't see her yellow hand. It's against the yellow background. So go ahead, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just speak in favor of this interim topic. I do think, I mean, I know of some situations in my district where there's kind of been some issues and people found there was not really a clear pathway to get those resolved or to receive any perhaps compensation if justified. So I do think we should look at that and make sure that we have those available when appropriate. So again, to support it.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Any further discussion on it? All right, we'll need a motion to approve this.
I'll make a motion to bring that.
Okay.
Second.
Motion. Okay, motion by Senator Larson, seconded by Representative Lawley. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we'll take that recommendation to the Management Council. The second one, it's got my name on it, but the state engineer and I discussed this a little late to get it on the Ag Committee interim topic discussion that we had while we were still in session. But I believe it better fits Select Water, and what we do here would work out better for that. Is our state engineer able to enter the meeting right now?
Mr. Chairman, this is Brandon Gebhardt. Yes, I'm on.
Oh, welcome to the meeting, Brandon. Go ahead when you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, Brandon Gebhardt, I'm the state engineer, and with me is Chris Brown. He is with the Attorney General's office. Chairman Eklund introduced him previously, and I would agree with some of the sentiments that Chairman Eklund mentioned. I do believe Chris is one of the best, if not the best, water attorneys. I think Wyoming is very fortunate to have him and his team helping us. One of our primary functions when we deal with interstate compacts, interstate decrees, of which we have 7 compacts and 3 decrees, our primary function is protecting Wyoming's water users and our water use. I think my staff and Chris do an excellent job of that. But it gets very complex because even within these decrees and compacts, we have obligations and we have to honor those obligations. And so the reason I'm bringing this topic is it falls right in line with that. That it's to protect our water use and our water users, but also recognize that we have obligations and there are risks if we don't meet those obligations. So I think everybody understands that we putting in a tremendous amount of work in negotiations on the Colorado River. You may not understand what we're doing. So I'll provide just a little bit of background and then explain how that fits in with this proposed interim topic. So over the last 25 years on the Colorado River, it had been the driest period in over 1,200 years. So since the 1922 compact was signed, they estimated much more water than we are experiencing now. And so that leads us to a situation where the demand is exceeding the supply. And it is draining some of the the two largest federal reservoirs in the nation are on this river, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And we're currently draining those operations to meet this demand. And so what we're negotiating, so throughout the history since 1922, the 7 basin states, which is Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Nevada, have all worked together to address these issues as they come up. And a majority of the time we get to a 7 states agreement or consensus on the best way to manage the system. I think that's important because the governor's representatives and the water managers in each of these states understand the situations and how to address them best. If we can't come to a consensus, there are 2 other avenues that are likely going to decide it for us. One is litigation, and that litigation goes directly to the United States Supreme Court. The second option for dealing with these compacts and decrees is some sort of congressional action. And in either of those circumstances, the people making the decisions for us know less about the water use than the people who we can try to get to a consensus with. So that is really what we're doing right now. In 2007, I mentioned that the 7 states worked together to address issues. There was recognition that the flows were decreasing before 2007. And so the 7 states got together. They developed a interim guidelines. So what these interim guidelines are is the operations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead, and how this system is operated to supply the demands both to the upper basin, which is Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico, and to the lower basin, which is the 3 remaining states, Arizona, California, and Nevada. So develop these 07 interim guidelines. They are set to expire at the end of 2026. As these guidelines were in operation, and conditions continued to deteriorate, in 2019, the 7 states got together and developed the drought contingency plan. Largely with the drought contingency plan and the 07 guidelines, the operations, but it also dictates who shares in reductions of water use, or how those shortages are spread out, and whose water is being turned off. And so what we've recognized since then is that our hydrology continues to deteriorate, less and less water, demand is increasing, and those 07 guidelines, they were interim, so they expire at the end of 2026. So what we're negotiating is a replacement for how this system operates, where shortages are, the who, the how, the when of shortage reductions within the basin. And so that's really what we're negotiating. And how that's occurring, on June 16th of 2023, the Bureau of Reclamation initiated a NEPA process. This has to go through the NEPA process to develop these plans that are going to replace the 07 interim guidelines. And so the hope was that the 7 states could submit an alternative to this NEPA process so that we could build on that foundation of the 7 states controlling their destiny on the river. We were unable to get to a consensus between the upper basin and the lower basin. We each submitted our separate alternatives. And so within part of the upper basin's alternative, we recognize we have obligations, as I mentioned. And so to help meet our obligations and address the issues that we're seeing on the river, the upper basin had offered several major things. One is a voluntary compensated conservation program in the upper basin to reduce our water use through a voluntary method. The other one was to use stored water in the upper basin initial units. Those initial units are Flaming Gorge, Aspinall, Glen Canyon Dam, and Navajo. And so those were created to provide water to the upper basin users as we continue to develop our uses, and also as a replacement of water to offset the current uses in times of drought and as this development occurs. So bringing it forward to where we currently are, we're going through these negotiations. Our time is running short on this, but we're still continuing to meet with the 7 basin states to see if we can still get to a 7-state consensus agreement. If we're able to do that, I do believe that the conservation in the upper basin will be a key component to get into that consensus. If we're unable to do that, and I will mention that all the 7 states right now are committed to getting to the 7-state consensus agreement. We're continuing to work hard. We're just not there yet. Absent that 7-state agreement, I mentioned the other 2 possible outcomes are litigation in the United States Supreme Court or congressional action. So I think it's very important that even with any of these 3 outcomes, the best thing we can do is to control our own destiny. And I think that at least understanding and potentially developing a voluntary conservation program in Wyoming helps us control our own destiny. And so that is the major reason I brought this interim topic up. We recognize that we have a tremendous amount of work to do because we still have to work with our Colorado River Advisory Committee. We have to work with the stakeholders and the water users in the state. This is not a developed concept yet, but we do understand that there are potentially some statutory or legal obstacles that we would need to overcome. So the question with this is to identify what those obstacles are and potentially how we could overcome those. I think this is in my opinion, this is a very important process to allow us to not only control our own destiny, but to meet our obligations under the compact and the law of the river, and hopefully get to the consensus agreement with the 7 states. I'll pause there for any question. I'll turn it over to Chris if he has anything to add, but I want to provide a little background as to why we're bringing this. But I'll pause for any questions.
Committee, do you have questions? Oh, we've got a hand up. Yes, Representative Chestic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree this is probably the most important topic we'll face in the next decade. Water rights are everything. My first question is, assuming that the 7-state negotiations go well and we reach some kind of a tentative agreement, is ratification of that agreement something that requires legislative action, or is that something that would be within the realm of executive power?
Brandon, go ahead when you're ready. That's one of my main questions. I'm wondering if we need this interim topic as a bill. So go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this is Chris Brown with the Attorney General's office. First, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the the tremendous compliment. I'll do my best not to disappoint that lofty standard. To answer the question, all 7 states recognize that we are not in a position to amend either the 1922 compact or the 1948 compact. That would in fact require legislative action by all 7 states and approval by the United States Congress, both under the terms of the compacts themselves and under the compact clause in the United States Constitution. And so what we're trying to achieve are voluntary agreements within, or voluntary programs within the Upper Basin. And so I do not believe what anybody is contemplating at this time is some agreement with our sister states that would need legislative approval in Wyoming. What we're asking for is trying to develop a framework of a conservation program that works in Wyoming, that does all the things that we see are necessary when we're talking about any sort of kind of a new program or any kind of change with regard to existing water use. We need to be thinking about things like harm to existing water uses, right? We're going to do no injury, or we need to not do any injury to existing water right holders. We need to be thinking about what sort of regulatory authority do we need in order to deliver on a promise, right? And that's being able to get conserved water from point A to point B, having the tools in place in order to measure it accurately, so that we're not harming anybody and we're actually getting appropriate amount of credit for whatever conservation we can create through some sort of a voluntary program. We need to be thinking about, and these are just some of the things that we expect and hope to have a robust discussion with regard to the committee, the advisory committee, the water users within the basin. But what we're thinking about is having some structure in place so that we can have, as Brandon said, a program that works for Wyoming. We can maintain control of our own destiny, and at the same time, make sure we're not harming existing water users. We need to take into account potential environmental impacts to our riparian areas. We need to, I think we've heard very loudly from a large number, the Trona mines specifically, they need to have something where they can have some certainty with regard to their future water supply. And so putting something in place that allows that structure, that framework, is really what we're trying to drive towards, to make sure that Wyoming has something in place that serves the best benefit for Wyoming.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Lawley, I kind of figured we'd have questions from the 2 attorneys. And I didn't mention part of the luxury of this committee will be to have attorneys on it. I don't think most of the ag committees don't get that, and select water either. So welcome, both of you. Go ahead and fire away with the questions that attorneys think up. Go ahead, Martha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, there's a couple of questions I have. I'll just post both of them and then you can answer. And one is actually just very general. It doesn't really have to do so much legally, as just, again, for my understanding a little bit better of, and so for Mr. Gebhardt, generally describe for me what this conservation program would be like in a very general way. I know that's part of what would be developed, but what kinds of things would be in this voluntary program? So that's one question. That's more for my background of on that piece of it. But my other question really is to Mr. Brown, and again, welcome, and you have come highly recommended, and I appreciate the work that you do in this very complex area of the law. So if I understand what I'm hearing is that we would be working on this in the interim as it would affect Wyoming, and working out potential statutory roadblocks or things that might need to be modified in order to create this program that is kind of falls short of actually trying to amend anything, but try to get an agreement among the states. And so what kind of parallel discussions would you be having during our interim to keep that we're keeping on pace with where we think the other 7 states are going. I just want to kind of understand the larger process a little bit. So Mr. Brown, if you could maybe give me a little insight in that. So
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take a stab at the first question of what does a conservation program look like? I've got some ideas, but I think a true conservation program is going to be informed by the stakeholders. So I'll offer some ideas, but certainly willing to listen and adjust as we need to, depending on what the water users want. But it could be anything from fallowing fields. We're looking at rotating irrigation times to nighttime irrigation, rotating crops, partial water for a season. We're looking at multiple types of conservation efforts. That could include conservation efforts by municipalities, by industry, any reduction in use. We want to be able to try to get credit for that to help us on the major river issues. So I hope I helped answer that, but I don't have all of the answers, but those are just some of the things that we continue to work on within the SEO.
that was very helpful. Thank you. That gave me a broad idea of what, when we use the phrase, what kind of things you're thinking about. So thank you. That was very helpful.
And I'll let Chris answer the second question.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lawley, and I'll do my best. And maybe this is a good time to, Brandon and I were talking as Jason was having the discussion with regard to your next meetings, talked about the orientation on the 6th. One thing that it's going to be incumbent on my team and Brandon's team to do is to educate you all much better with regard to a very complex topic. To try to explain some of these incredibly, I guess, complex issues that we're trying to negotiate on the river. And so I think we'd like to offer up our services to try and do that on the 6th or any other time the committee would like to be available. That's part of our obligation as we see it, is to make sure you folks have the best information that you can. And so Representative Lawley, I'll try to take a high level stab at that right now. As I understood your question in any way, but I think what we're thinking about as far as agreements, and I'm just trying to think about the best way to explain this. Under the law of the river, as Brandon mentioned, we definitely have obligations. We also have rights that were established under those compacts. Primarily when we're talking about this process, we're talking about the 1922 Colorado River Compact. That compact is a total of about 5 pages of substance, right? You can sit down and you can read it in a cup of coffee. So it's not incredibly prescriptive. It's not incredibly detailed. And as you might imagine, based on a foundational document like that, there's a whole lot of differing opinions with regard to what things mean in today's environment. And so the states, as we get together, we need to recognize that we don't all agree with regard to what those provisions mean, with regard to both the rights and the obligations. And so what, at base, in my opinion, what we're trying to do is come to an accord, come to an agreement for some interim period with regard to the disagreements we have to some of those foundational obligations and rights. And if we can do that for this interim period, then we can move forward without having to seek judicial clarity with regard to what those obligations mean. And so the thinking generally is, and it goes right back to maintaining control of our own destiny. If we can, through voluntary conservation, satisfy our compact partners, the other states that are on this system, through that voluntary type of an activity, then they can agree to forego enforcing their rights, right? And so that's kind of the legal mechanism that we're looking at. The 1922 compact is broad enough that we can fit within it the agreements that we're contemplating. And so generally, it's just, we know we've got a dispute with regard to the legal application of this contract that exists between the states, and we're looking for an accord to move forward in the current circumstances that we find ourselves. Hopefully that answered your question. Happy to expand if it didn't.
That was extremely helpful background to get that sense of where we are, and I generally had understood it, but that was helpful. I would ask, just as a follow-up, so obviously all this is happening in kind of in real time, and I'm trying to understand what role you might be involved in, and as we're working through the Wyoming side of it to try to work through these issues to kind of get to that point of a kind of accord. Is there going to be ongoing discussions and negotiations with the 7 states so we can have some knowledge of kind of where they are, or is that not part of the process for us, in your mind?
So, Mr. Chair, yeah, I've been doing this for, I don't know, what, 13, 14 years now, and we're kind of in constant negotiation. This is a river that never sleeps. I think it's been described as the most highly regulated river in the world. We are kind of at a very heightened, very active point in time on the river. We are meeting with our fellow partners on the river constantly. For example, Brandon and I we're in New Mexico Monday and Tuesday, and we're in Los Angeles Thursday and Friday next week. And so this is a very fluid situation. It's a very active negotiation. From our perspective, all the states are trying to work through some incredibly complicated issues, not only on the bigger river level, but back home. And we recognize we've got complicated concerns that we need to address in Wyoming. And we also recognize that those concerns are probably amplified greatly in states like Colorado and Arizona, where they've got things that they need to think about that aren't necessarily directly in front of us. So to answer your question, this will be an ongoing process that will probably never stop so long as you're on this committee and so long as I'm sitting in my chair. And we will do our best to keep everybody up to date. Obviously recognizing that there are going to be some things that are going to be confidential that we need to be very careful as we work through the governor's office. We work through the advisory committee. We can't get out over our skis too much, but certainly one of our jobs, one of our obligations is to keep this committee informed with regard to the state of play, so that you all can make good informed decisions about what's best for Wyoming from a legislative standpoint.
Mr. Chairman, just one last comment. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for that. And I certainly have a better appreciation and understanding of the high praise you've received. This is a very complicated area, and appreciate all that you guys are doing for Wyoming in a less than ideal environment that we're in currently under the law, and you know, the idea of kind of creating an accord is fantastic. But I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Oh, there you, Senator Larson.
Yes, thank you. I know we've been discussing this for quite a few years. If we do some conservation in Wyoming, how are we going to shepherd that water to where it needs to get? Is that some discussion you're having amongst the states? I'm sure it is.
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, and you obviously been involved in part of these discussions for quite some time and bring a unique perspective because you used to have a job to shepherd that water. And how in the world do you get that done? And so most definitely that is part of the conversation. And it starts from wherever the conservation occurs, being able to legally and technically defend the fact that that water was actually conserved. Then once you do that, you got to get it from point A to point B. How do I show that that actually happened? Once you get it to point B, which is ultimately going to be Lee Ferry down in Arizona, how do I show what amount of that water? Huge technical hurdles, huge legal hurdles, and a whole lot of potential impacts that occur between those two points. And so I think our hope as part of this discussion is having the shepherding discussion. Is there something that we can form, something that we can really tailor to this circumstance, not only so that we can properly quantify what potential impacts that we might have to other Wyoming water users, because you need to know that information in order to have something like this. But I think it's fair for our sister states to say, prove it, right? Trust but verify. They're gonna, if we're gonna say that we're promised we're gonna conserve a certain amount, or we say that we just did conserve a certain amount, we're gonna have the same questions for them. Show me, because we have a joint obligation. The upper division states under the 22 compact have a joint obligation at Lee Ferry under the 22 compact, and we're going to want to make sure that each of us is doing our fair share of the lifting. And so we're going to have the same questions for our friends in Colorado that they're going to have for us. We claim that we've conserved a certain amount of water. They're going to want to have some assurance that actually happened, and some assurance that that water actually makes it to the place where it has to do the work, which is ultimately Lee Ferry. And that's just amongst our very close upper basin friends. Our lower basin friends are going to have the same questions, because it is directly going to impact the amount of reductions that they're facing in the lower basin. So I think the shepherding question is definitely one of the questions that we would hope to bring up during this discussion. And like some of the other questions that I've already raised, if we're going to have some of our water rights voluntarily participating in such a program, we want to protect it. We don't want them to be potentially subject to abandonment for voluntarily foregoing use of their water. We're going to want to potentially think about mechanisms to other water users can be part of the process in case they believe they're going to be injured. There's a whole stack of potential issues that we hope to explore. And maybe to bring this up to some of the newer members, this isn't a brand new conversation. It's not like we haven't done some of the work before. If you take a look at the legislative report that our Colorado River Advisory Committee submitted last June, and they'll be submitting another one, I think you'll find that a lot of their priorities are geared towards this kind of a thing, impact this kind of a thing. The state engineer's office and the Upper Colorado River Commission have been doing a ton of technical work trying to help flesh out these issues, these technical issues on how to prove up what it is we might do with conservation. The state entered into agreements in 2019 called the Drought Contingency Plans, where we set up kind of a framework on how to make this happen that asked these questions as part of that process. We set up focus groups to really drill in on some of the issues that were on the fronts of minds of some of our water users. So we've done quite a bit of homework. We're doing a lot of work right now, which is really stressing and taxing a lot of the folks in Brandon's shop that are working on this, moving forward, which was another discussion. What more resources are we going to need in order to tackle this? Really, it's unique, and it's a first of its kind of conversation in Wyoming. Senator Larson, as you know, this is not a simple thing, and it's something that's going to take a lot of critical thinking and a lot of folks being part of the solution, just like Representative Eklund said, not only this committee, but our advisory committee and all of the water users and stakeholders in the basin.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just add, Chris alluded to it, but I think we've got probably over a dozen studies or activities currently going on that we're involved with to help answer some of the questions that Chris brought up, whether it's conveyance losses, transit losses, just really getting to the answer of where does the water get, how much of it, and when. So we've got a lot of work going on currently within our agency and the other upper basin states.
Okay, committee, are there further questions? I'm not seeing any hands, so speak up if you've had
Chairman,
anything to add.
I just had one follow-up, Mr. Chairman. This is Representative Lawley. you've been talking about 2026. Is there a precise date in 2026 that the agreements expire? And can you give us that? Because obviously one of the distinctions is that we are under a time constraint, a rather tough time constraint. So could you maybe tell me if there's a specific date?
So, Mr. Chairman, the 2007 guidelines expire December 31st, 2026.
2025.
2025, excuse me.
Okay.
The operational parameters will have already been set for water year 2026. So the guidelines, the current guidelines will dictate how the reservoirs are operated in 2026. But because it's the NEPA process, the consensus, the framework idea of a consensus agreement, we think needs to be done probably within the next 2 to 3 months. So it is a very short fuse, and then that would be inserted into the NEPA process, and the NEPA process itself is going to take some time, but the consensus is a very short time frame.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'd entertain a motion for this interim topic.
I
So
make
moved.
a motion.
Okay, moved by Lawley, seconded by Chestick. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, opposed? No, that motion passes. So this will be brought to the management council, and I presume we'll have state engineer and whoever needs to be there to try to promote this, make sure we get it across the line. We'll also have Senate Chairman of Agriculture there, and maybe the vice chairman on this committee could also be involved in that discussion if necessary with management council. Brandon, did you have more?
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to offer one more time. Chris mentioned it, but we would be happy to find a time to either a webinar or the May 6th meeting to do a little deeper dive into all of the things, not just in the Colorado River, but everything the state engineer's office is involved in. So if that's something that this committee would be interested in, perhaps you and I can work something out to figure out the best time to do that.
I think we would be. Vice Chairman Boner, I forgot to mention you might be at the management council. By then you should be caught up on chores at home, right?
No guarantee, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I have another topic that I'd like to propose for the committee, if that's okay.
I think so. We didn't have any deadline on when these needed to be proposed. Go ahead. We need to vote on this first. So we've got to. No, we did. It's passed. I'm sorry. Committee, you'll find that I get lost in the agenda and the structure of our decorum often. So forgive me. We've got one more suggestion. Senator Boner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One additional topic I think we should consider is picking up where we left off with the aging critical irrigation infrastructure topic. This was something the Agriculture Committee worked on in years past. And we pursued and finished a level 1 study that was a quick assessment of things like La Perelle, things like Goshen Irrigation District. So we have a basic understanding of what additional infrastructure is out there that I think would be prudent to maybe get ahead of and not wait until it fails or almost fails before we start discussing remedies. And so obviously another big topic, but one I think is absolutely vital to continue that initial work that we've already paid for. That level 1 study is done, and I think we should continue to develop potential courses of action to hopefully, like I said, get ahead of the bell curve there, not wait till there's a crisis. So that's a very brief overview of what I think another topic we should take up in the interim.
Committee, any questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion on that. If
Question, Mr. Chairman.
go, we got a question. Yes, Senator Guru, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Jason, I think the senator brings up a great point as far as, as far as keeping going with this. You are finished with a kind of an overview on that aging infrastructure. What does your staff, given the rest of the workload that you've got for this interim, can you help us shepherd that one along to the next level as far as what we're asking here?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that we could provide some information on that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? And we could get limited by the management council. That's usually always have a haircut when they're done with us. So just so the committee's aware of that. So have we got a motion and a second on the table? Does anybody remember?
I would so move.
Okay,
Owners.
Second,
thank you, Representative Strauch.
second.
Seconded by Gru. Okay. No further discussion. All those in favor of that interim topic, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we'll have three topics. Okay. Is there any further consideration we need to do in this meeting? Director, do you have anything more?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, committee. We'll see you in May, if not sooner. And we are adjourned.